Celebrity lifestyles may look glamorous, but tragedy often strikes on the road. Over the years, some of the most shocking car crashes have claimed the lives of stars, leaving fans stunned. These horrifying accidents remind us how fragile life is, no matter the fame, fortune, or spotlight surrounding someone. Steve Prefontaine's story is one of those bittersweet legends that continues to echo through the world of sports. It was 1975 in Eugene, Oregon, a city that had become the heartbeat of American distance running, and Prefontaine was its crown jewel. Known simply as Pre, he wasn't just another runner turning laps on the track. He was a showman, a rebel, and a force of nature wrapped up in a wiry frame. At just 24 years old, he had already achieved stardom, filling stadiums with fans who cheered as if they were at a rock concert. He had charisma that extended far beyond the track, representing not only the University of Oregon, but also the new rebellious identity of American athletics. However, his promising life came to an abrupt and tragic end on May 30th, 1975, in a car crash that has remained as infamous as his incredible running career. That night began like any other post-meet celebration. Prefontaine had competed earlier in the day and later joined friends for a gathering where his magnetic personality shone as it always did. After midnight, he drove his 1973 MGB convertible through the winding and hilly roads of Eugene, a stylish car that suited his fiery image but offered little protection in a crash. After dropping off his passengers, he was alone when tragedy struck. The official account states that his car drifted across the center line on Skyline Boulevard, hit a curb, collided with a rock wall, and flipped, leaving him trapped beneath the vehicle. He died of traumatic asphyxiation, crushed under the overturned car, only blocks away from home. His blood alcohol level was reported to be 0.16%, more than the legal limit, and this detail shaped much of the public conversation around his death. Some accepted it as a case of drinking and driving, while others insisted that poor visibility or perhaps another car on the road might have forced him into a split-second reaction. Arguments over the true cause remain unresolved even today, feeding the aura of mystery that surrounds his final hours. What makes this loss feel even heavier is not only the way he died, but what he symbolized. Prefontaine was never content to sit quietly in the middle of the pack. He was a front-runner in every sense, both in racing strategy and in his approach to life. He challenged authority, fought for athletes' rights, and embodied a fearless spirit that inspired an entire generation. He also became an early symbol for Nike, giving the fledgling company its first taste of sporting identity. When he died, the running community lost more than a record setter. They lost a revolutionary voice who seemed destined for greatness beyond the track. His memorial, known as Pre's Rock, stands at the crash site and has become a pilgrimage spot for runners who leave shoes, medals, and notes in his honor. His death was tragic, yet his life remains an enduring lesson in living boldly and unapologetically. Prefontaine burned bright, raced hard, and though his story ended too soon, it cemented his status as an unforgettable legend whose spirit continues to inspire decades later. Roland Ratzenberger was the kind of racer who chased his dreams with the intensity of a kid chasing the ice cream truck on a hot summer day, and in 1994, he finally made it to Formula One. Now, F1 isn't exactly the place for a laid-back Sunday drive. It's high-octane chaos, metal screaming around corners at speeds that make most of us feel queasy just watching. Roland, an Austrian with a heart full of determination and probably a caffeine addiction rivaling a coffee shop's monthly sales, joined the Simtek team, a scrappy little outfit in the grand theater of Formula One giants. His first few outings had been humble, but he was hungry, and Imola was his chance to shine. The San Marino Grand Prix wasn't just any weekend, it was where legends raced, and as fate would have it, where the course of racing history would twist dramatically. Qualifying for F1 races is basically a stress test for both driver and car. You're hurtling around a circuit, hugging curves like you're in a high-speed dance-off, trying to shave milliseconds off every lap. Roland was pushing hard on April 30th, 1994, on the Villeneuve Straight, his car slicing the air, engine roaring like a dragon that had just discovered energy drinks. But the universe can be cruel, and the Simtek wasn't exactly a fortress of invincibility. Earlier, the front wing of his car, basically the thing that keeps your car glued to the track instead of flying off like a giant paper airplane, got damaged when he hit a curb. Most people in that situation would pit, check the damage, maybe mutter a few colorful words and calm down. But Roland, ever the optimist, thought, nope, let's see what this baby can still do. He stayed out, pushing the car to its limits, believing that maybe, just maybe, a miracle lap was still possible. And then the tragic inevitability happened. At over 300 kilometers per hour, the weakened front wing gave way. Physics didn't negotiate. It simply reminded everyone that speed is not something you can argue with. The car shot straight into the concrete barrier. 1 second, Roland was there, controlling his machine with skill and guts, and the next, the crash was over. Emergency crews rushed to him, but the damage was catastrophic. Roland Ratzenberger, who had spent his life chasing dreams in fast lanes, didn't survive. The news hit the F1 world like a meteor. It had been 12 years since the last driver died during a race weekend, and the shockwaves were amplified by the fact that this was just the prelude to one of motorsport's most infamous weekends. What followed was a sobering wake-up call for the entire sport. Ayrton Senna's death the very next day overshadowed Roland's tragic end, but Ratzenberger's loss wasn't forgotten by those who understood the fragility of life at 300 kilometers per hour. Safety measures in Formula One, which had always been evolving, suddenly went into overdrive. Tracks were redesigned, cars strengthened, and the drivers' helmets and suits became something that could survive what used to be unsurvivable. In a weird way, Roland's brief time on the grand stage became a catalyst for change, a reminder that the thrill of speed comes with consequences, and that even a small team with a big dream can leave a lasting mark. Roland Ratzenberger wasn't a world champion. He didn't have podiums lined up like trophies on a shelf, and his career stats don't look impressive on paper, but in the hearts of motorsport fans, he embodies the relentless spirit of a racer, bold, daring, and unafraid to chase glory even when the odds are stacked impossibly high. Imola 1994 reminds us of the fine line between triumph and tragedy, the thin thread that separates victory from disaster, and the kind of courage it takes to live and race without holding back. In the end, Roland's story isn't just about a crash. It's about a dreamer who refused to slow down, who chased his passion at the very edge, and who left the world forever changed, both in memory and in the safety of the sport he loved. His name may not fill highlight reels, but his legacy runs deep in the veins of Formula One, a quiet testament to determination, bravery, and the fleeting brilliance of chasing a dream at full throttle. Albert Camus, the celebrated French philosopher, author, and Nobel Prize winner, met a tragic and sudden end on January 4, 1960, in a car accident near Villeneuve in France. At just 46 years old, his life and career were abruptly cut short, leaving the literary world and philosophical circles in profound shock. Camus was a passenger in a Simca 1300, driven by his friend Michel Gallimard, the nephew of the renowned publisher Gaston Gallimard. The car, traveling at high speed along the quiet French roads, suddenly skidded and collided with a tree, killing Camus instantly. Gallimard survived the initial impact but passed away a few days later from the injuries sustained in the crash. The suddenness of the event, a moment of ordinary travel turned fatal in seconds, made the loss even more striking, particularly as Camus was at the height of his intellectual influence, having recently won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1957 and published some of his most enduring works, including The Stranger and The Plague. The accident, while officially considered a tragic mishap, has sometimes been the subject of speculation, with conspiracy theories suggesting external forces due to Camus' political stances. However, historians generally agree that the crash was a tragic accident, the result of speed, road conditions, and the inherent unpredictability of life. Camus' death served as a harsh reminder of the fragility of human existence, the very theme he explored so profoundly in his philosophical works. He often reflected on the absurdity of life, the tension between humanity's search for meaning and the indifference of the universe, and in an almost cruelly ironic twist, his own death mirrored these themes, a sudden, unexpected end to a life defined by contemplation of mortality, ethics, and the human condition. The world mourned the loss of a thinker whose works challenged conventional thought and inspired reflection on freedom, responsibility, and moral integrity. His absence left a void in literature and philosophy that could never truly be filled, but his writings continued to influence generations of readers, scholars, and writers, standing as a testament to the enduring power of ideas even after the loss of the individual who conceived them. In this sense, Camus's death is not only remembered as a personal tragedy, but also as a moment that highlighted the fleeting nature of life and the unpredictable forces that shape it. The car crash that ended his life remains a historical point of reflection on both the randomness of fate and the enduring significance of human thought. While the details of the accident are grim, the high-speed collision, the sudden loss of life, the grief of friends and family, the legacy Camus left behind endures far beyond the physical moment of his death. His work continues to provoke thought, inspire inquiry, and remind humanity of the delicate balance between life, death, and the pursuit of meaning. In losing Camus, the world was deprived not only of a brilliant mind, but of a voice capable of articulating the tension between human hope and the indifference of existence, leaving behind a life's work that continues to challenge, educate, and resonate decades later. Harry Chapin, the celebrated singer-songwriter known for heartfelt hits like Cats in the Cradle and Taxi, lived a life dedicated not just to music, but to making the world a better place. On July 16, 1981, tragedy struck that life abruptly. Chapin, only 38 years old, was driving his Volkswagen Rabbit on the Long Island Expressway in New York, heading to a free benefit concert at Eisenhower Park in East Meadow, a testament to his lifelong commitment to charitable causes. What should have been an ordinary afternoon for a man devoted to his craft and philanthropy became the day the world lost him. Chapin had activated his emergency flashers and slowed to roughly 15 miles per hour, weaving between lanes, when his car was struck from behind by a semi-trailer truck. The impact caused the vehicle to burst into flames. Passers-by and the truck driver were able to pull Chapin from the burning car, but despite their efforts, he was airlifted to Nassau County Medical Center and pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m., with internal bleeding identified as the primary cause. The circumstances of his death have remained somewhat uncertain, with speculation that a heart attack may have occurred either before or after the collision. Complicating matters further, reports indicate that Chapin's driver's license had been revoked due to previous traffic violations, a detail that underscores the tragic unpredictability of the event. The aftermath of Chapin's death saw both grief and legal action. His widow, Sandra Chapin, filed a negligence lawsuit against Supermarkets General, the owner of the truck involved in the crash, and ultimately secured a $12 million judgment. Rather than using the settlement for personal gain, Sandra Chapin redirected it toward charitable causes, including the Harry Chapin Foundation, continuing the humanitarian work that had defined her husband's life. This act not only preserved Chapin's legacy, but also highlighted his lifelong dedication to social causes, particularly his efforts to combat hunger. In many ways, the continuation of these initiatives after his death is a testament to Chapin's influence beyond the world of music, showing that his impact on the world would endure even after his untimely passing. Chapin's death was a profound loss to both the artistic and philanthropic communities. Musically, he left behind a body of work defined by storytelling, empathy, and social awareness. His songs captured human emotion and experience in ways few artists manage, and they continue to resonate decades after his passing. In addition, his humanitarian work, particularly his advocacy for feeding the hungry, has left an enduring mark. Honors such as the renaming of the Lakeside Theater at Eisenhower Park to the Harry Chapin Lakeside Theater and the posthumous Congressional Gold Medal awarded in 1987 reflect the breadth of his influence. Ultimately, Harry Chapin's life and tragic death serve as a reminder of both the fragility of life and the enduring power of compassion. Even in the face of sudden loss, his music and humanitarian legacy continue to inspire, demonstrating that a life committed to creativity and service can leave an indelible mark, far beyond the fleeting span of years. Cliff Burton's death in 1986 is one of those moments in rock history that feels like time just stopped, a gut punch that left Metallica and millions of fans reeling. The band was in Sweden on their Master of Puppets European tour, riding high with momentum and their music taking over the world. Cliff, at just 24, was the long-haired, denim-wearing genius whose bass did not just play notes, but roared, screamed, and growled like a lead guitar. He was not simply the bassist, he was the secret weapon, the man who turned Metallica's sound from raw thrash into something almost orchestral with his distorted riffs and classical influences. In the early hours of September 27th, fate took a cruel turn. The tour bus, barreling down the road near Ljungby in Sweden, reportedly hit black ice and lost control. It swerved, flipped, and in that terrifying chaos, Cliff was thrown through the window and pinned underneath. In the dead of night on a lonely Swedish road, Metallica lost their backbone, and the world lost a talent that had not even reached full bloom. What makes Cliff's story strike so deeply is how young he was and how much he had already achieved in such a short time. His bass solos were not background noise. They were events that often stole the show. Tracks like Anesthesia Pulling Teeth made listeners rethink what a bass could even accomplish in heavy music. He had this aura, a mix of quiet confidence and rebellious fire, as though he knew he was shaping something different in the world of metal. Cliff was also the band's moral compass in many ways, described by friends and bandmates as grounded, the one who could cut through chaos with honesty. He had won his place in Metallica through sheer talent, and had secured his bunk the night of the crash through a simple coin toss with Kirk Hammett. Ironically, that coin toss put him in the spot that led to his tragic fate. It remains one of those cruel twists that feels straight out of a tragedy, except this was no fiction but a devastating reality. The aftermath left the band shattered and unsure of how to move forward. There was talk of disbanding because replacing someone like Cliff Burton seemed impossible, yet in true metal spirit, they chose to continue. Jason Newsted was brought in to fill the role, and while he carried the music forward, Cliff's presence never truly left. For fans and the band alike, the thought of what might have been always lingers. If Cliff had lived, Metallica's sound might have evolved in even more daring and experimental directions, but that chapter will forever remain unwritten. His influence remains undeniable, woven into the very DNA of metal. Even decades later, fans travel to the crash site in Sweden, leaving flowers, pics, and messages as if it were a sacred ground of rock history. His legacy echoes every time Master of Puppets is blasted through speakers or whenever a bassist dares to push boundaries in his spirit. Cliff Burton may have left this world far too soon, but he left it heavier, bolder, and unshakably alive. His death marked a tragic end, but his legacy stands as pure immortality.